Hey guys, welcome to my first video of 2024. In this video I'm going to share some tips on painting snow and watercolor. Over the past 10-15 years I've painted a lot of watercolors. I probably have 10 of these plastic totes full of watercolors. So probably the two trickiest things to paint in watercolor is snow and water, because you want to reserve the white of the paper, because the white of the paper is the brightest white there is. So there's several ways you can do that. You can do a negative painting where you're leaving the white of the paper and you're painting around your subject. So say if there's a bunch of trees here, you're going to paint around those shapes to leave the white of the paper. So let's say I have 3 trees here. You're going to go back in and just create places where the snow would lay on the branches. You know the snow is not always pure white unless it's freshly fallen, you're out in the forest. Most of the time in the city, it doesn't take long for a snowplow to come along and dump a bunch of dirt on the snow and make the snow look brown. So that's one way, negative painting around, leaving negative spaces. You can also go back in and try to lift out trees, lifting out the pigment. But then again, you're not going to get back to the original white of the paper, so it's not going to be like pure white snow. Go in and tighten these areas up a little bit. Adding in your shadows. But you can also use this drawing gum, liquid frisket, it's also called. Masking fluid, it's called. I like to use a Q-tip, because you don't want to ever use a paintbrush. You can put soap on a paintbrush, the bristles of the brush, to try to protect the paintbrush. I still don't like doing that. I like to just go in and mask out areas. With the masking fluid, wherever you put this down and let it dry, then you go back in and peel it off. That'll leave the white of the paper still there. For little areas, you can use a toothpick to make really fine lines. You can also use a white oil pastel crayon. You can lightly leave marks. This is also good for doing snow. can use white India ink, but if you put it on too thick, it cracks. Some people like to use salt. You can use gouache from cheap Artist Loft gouache from Michaels, or good Winsor Newton designer gouache. After that masking fluid's dried, you can go back in and paint over the top of it. So now that the paint's dried, you can go back in and rub out your masking fluid. And you can go back in. Add some colors to the snow, because like I said, snow's not always totally white. It reflects the sunlight and shadows. There's usually one side of the tree that's more in the shadow than the other side, depending on which direction the light's coming from. And then you can take your gouache on a damp toothbrush and go in and too much water in your toothbrush. Go in and spatter snow. So here's a couple paintings I did using those same techniques and materials, and also a quick time lapse of a painting.